Few years since I last spoke at IMUG. There is one thing that I like more than traveling is traveling to talk to people like you. So this is a lot of fun for me. I know a few of the faces here, which is great. The last time I was here was one of those meetings that Joe was talking about with a few rooms, and we were talking about, I think I was at Common Sense Advisory still at that time, and it's been more than 10 years that I left Common Sense Advisory. So let me talk to you about two things as an introduction. I started this company called Nimdzi Insights. Nimdzi is a word in Fante that means, Fante is a language from Ghana, and it means knowledge. And the reason why I chose this name was because my partner's wife is from Ghana, and I started asking her words in her language, and Nimdzi was the first one that was short and was available on GoDaddy. So a very scientific method. We deal with knowledge in this space. Our idea for the business is to provide information to the world about the localization industry. A lot of our information is free, so I urge you to follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube. We have free videos, free webinars, a bunch of stuff. I brought one copy of my book with Tucker Johnson, The General Theory of the Translation Company. And I don't know how, but I'm going to give it away at the end of the day. We'll figure out a creative way of giving it. What we do, we have a team of 8 people spread around the world. This is one of the best industries in the world because it's always in the forefront of any social change. Today, people talk about the future of work. People talk about the gig economy. And we've been doing this since the 1980s. We are a type of business and function that is spread around the world. We're global. From the beginning of the internet, we were the first industry to start using the internet. We're always working on the next new thing. So it's really rewarding to see a lot of you young people putting your lives into this business. One of the things that impresses me about this industry is how much fear there is in this space. There is a lot of fear of change, fear that technology is going to kill the business, and that next year there's not going to be any translation. So I see that a lot of you first-year students at NIS don't believe in that. That makes you very smart. You're an elite, because how many of you, especially the students, think that Google Translate, let's say this, when is machine translation going to replace human translation? And I'll give you 3 options. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, or never. So who thinks A? B? C? Okay, you're wrong. Because machine translation has already replaced humans about, I don't know, every day. Google Translate translates more than in one day than all human translators into all languages translate in 1 year. So translation itself is already done by machines in terms of quantity, and men are obsolete, and women too. I need to be inclusive, I forgot. And I'm old-fashioned. If I slip and I say something inappropriate, I apologize in advance. I'm trying to quit that misogynistic and insensitive ways that I used to have in the past. Sorry. Enough with my confessions here. Let's talk about the reality of the world. Is it it's working fine? Okay. Every once in a while, I have a sense that I miss the sound. So the topic of the presentation today is a landscape of the technology in the language space. This is a map of all the language technologies that NIMSI has identified. It's part of a study. You can download this picture for free at nimsi.com, and I don't know exactly the link. You'll search for Language Technology Atlas. It's a project that I have that we started when I founded NIMSI. That is the idea to map all the technologies that are available in the world. And this is the first map of a series of maps that we're going to do. There are over 200 technologies categorized by type of problem that they solve. And here we have some more detail of the categorization. So you have 700 translation editors or CAT tools. You have 30 terminology management tools, 17 TMS that LSPs and buyers can get, so that are available commercially. 38 localization tools, 17 business management systems, 23 website localization tools with proxy or JS-based tech, whatever that means. What is not mapped here is one of the characteristics of our industry. How many LSPs are in the room? People who work for LSPs? Okay. Of those, how many of you work in proprietary systems developed in your own company? Okay, right? So everybody has a system, and this is not part of this landscape of this map. What I want to say is that technology is not a problem. Technology is not a barrier. Technology is not a challenge. This is an industry where it's very easy to start a technology company. Actually, the industry as a whole is an industry that has no barrier to entry. It's very easy. Any one of you can go to GoDaddy, find a 6-letter word, maybe from another language, not Fante, and create a new domain, and tomorrow you're in business. You can buy some of these technologies. You can use a technology like MateCat that is totally free and open source, and you're running a business. There are no barriers to entry. It's very easy to start in this business. So what is our business about? Our business is not about language. It's not about technology. Our business is about services, and it's essentially about project management. But that's not the scope of the presentation today. Let's talk a little bit about the size of the industry. Here we have identified more or less what is the distribution of the revenue by segment in the technology space. What do you see in common among these numbers? What's your first reaction when you see these numbers? Mike, what? Lots of millions, but what do you think, Mike? Very small, isn't it? It's ridiculous. How can you talk about an industry where you have numbers like this? $20 million is what Jim here has in his bank account. All right, and that's the size of I don't even know what that one is, dubbing tools, right? $80 million for translator. The biggest one is $300 million for machine translation. That's an estimate. Maybe it's more. I don't know how much Google is making on machine translation now because they decided that it's a priority business. It might be a little bigger. But anyway, it's not a lot of money. In fact, if you compare the size of the technology industry to the industry as a whole, it's a fraction, right? It's less than 10%, or a little more than 10%. It's like 15%. So $49 billion. No, it's much less than 10%. It's 1.5% maybe. $49 billion is our estimate of the size of the industry as a whole, including services, including technology, including everything, all kinds of language services, and less than $1 billion in translation technology. So it's a very, very, very small business. This afternoon, I had a meeting with a private equity firm that wanted to invest in technology for the language industry because and I don't know what is the newest business book that is going on in the market, but every few years, I get a call from an investor that has this brilliant idea. They read the Blue Ocean Strategy. Yeah, we're going to be the disruptor, and we're going to be the low-cost provider, etc. A few years ago, it was Black Swan, or whatever the business book is that they're reading, they're going to try and bring it to our industry, and it never works because our industry follows its own dynamic. And and this is part of another presentation. By the way, I have to run out of here because I'm jumping on a plane to Ottawa in Canada, where I'm going to make another presentation where I talk about the other part of this conversation, which is the fact that we have patterns in this industry that repeat themselves all the time, right? And one of the patterns that we have in our industry is a pattern of fear. There's this fear that, oh, I already said that the world is going to end and so on. And every cycle, the market grows, there's more work for everybody, there are new companies that show up, and Adobe, IMUG, Joe told us, has been around for 30 years. I bet that 90% of the companies, of the people who work for the companies that participate at IMUG today didn't exist 30 years ago, or 99% of the companies didn't exist 30 years ago. The reality is our industry is, it's not an end industry. It's not something that is the purpose of any major organization. We are a through process. What we do is a consequence of another process. It's a product that is developed that needs to be sold internationally. It's a contract that needs to be translated to be read and enforced in other countries. It's a driver's license that needs to be used to allow a person to drive or get an identification in another place. So we're never the end purpose of whatever we do. And this is why our business survives and thrives, because there's always something new that is going to come up. As the same way, I like to say that when I was young, MTV came out, and the #1 hit on MTV in the beginning was Video Killed the Radio Star. Everybody thought that it was the end of the radio with MTV. And guess what? Radio is thriving. And now you have offline radio, podcasts. How many of you listen to podcasts? Wow. How many of you listen to my podcast? Okay, good. There's a lot of you who should go to globallyspeakingradio.com and listen to a very interesting podcast about these topics. And podcasting is radio, essentially, right? So for us, one of the analysis that we did earlier this year that affects this growth and this 49 billion number is Netflix. Is anybody from Netflix here? No? Who has translated for Netflix ever? Well, quite a few people, right? Netflix didn't exist the way it exists. Well, 3 years ago, they were just in the United States, and now all of a sudden they are in 100 countries. This created a glut. There aren't enough translators in the market to translate all the content with the skills required to translate all the content that Netflix needs. And this is a bubble. And this bubble is going to go away. Some of you here are old enough to remember Vista, Microsoft Vista. There was a bubble. What was that? 96, more or less, maybe around that time. It was the what is that? 2006. Well, there was a 6 in there. 10 years. 2006. There was the Vista bubble, right? Because all the software needed to be changed and adapted to run on Vista. And there was a lot of localization that was required, and there weren't enough people who were capable of doing that stuff. So we have these bubbles. This is a very, very short, and it's not comprehensive. Please don't be sticklers and try to find the errors in there. But this is more or less the evolution of the language technology and how it's been going for most of the people here in this space. How many of you remember Trados 1.0, Deja Vu, XL8? Does anybody remember XL8? Fuck, you're old, man. Old people here. TM2, I worked on TM2, the IBM translation memory technology. At that time, I mean, the fact that you could put an accent in a letter was amazing. Because I remember, people don't remember these conversations, but in my country, in Brazil, people were already talking about eliminating accents from our words because computers couldn't print accents. So the evolution of the language was going to be the elimination of accents. That's how absurd things are. And today with Unicode, this thing seems silly. You can see and render any character for, and now the problem is emojis. There aren't enough codes for emojis. Back in the late last century, we were all looking at this revolutionary technology, the translation management systems, the global site and idiom. And if you look at this today, and this is the important thing about this specific part, because we are here almost 20 years after idiom, and people are still using idiom, and they're trying to get out of it, and it's really hard to get out of it. So the lesson of this is that when you commit to a technology, it's not something to be taken lightly. You're going to be married to that technology for 20, 25, 30 years. Not long ago, and some people will not understand this reference because you're too young, not long ago, I was working with a client that still retrieved their pricing from an AS400 system. Jim is going to have a thing here. He remembers that when he worked at Motorola. Motorola? What did Motorola do? Car radios? No. Cell phones? No, they don't exist anymore. So that's the thing. Now, 2001 to 2008, you started talking more about the first cloud deployments, people talking about integrations and working systems and memo queue, translation memory designed with the translator in mind. It's more personalized, right? Now we're living in this phase of the cloud and integration, where what really matters is how many connectors and APIs you have and who do you connect with, because finally we are looking at technology as an enabler and not so much as the end all and be all of the translation process. And finally, we're now looking at machine learning as part of the process. And you have these companies on Babel, and it's still in a very early phase. So there is a lot of hype. We're in the hype curve of the hype phase of the curve, and but machine learning is a reality. Some companies are doing a pretty good job, like Translated.net, the Italians, and I've seen some stuff with Cordoba that was quite interesting. But they're still very early on. We're in the early stages of that process. The other area of the business that is fascinating for me, because it's an area that is growing a lot, is interpretation. And I know that there are a few people, like Nika here, who is on the interpreter side. How many of you are interpreters in the room? Okay, very few. Remote interpretation is an area that is growing, and that's fantastic because it allows for more use of interpretation. Interpretation has a lot of possible cases. You have several types of interpretation: consecutive, simultaneous, and sign language interpretation is an area. By the way, shit, I already gave it all. Can I say shit? Or shit is not allowed? No, I can't say shit. Okay. Okay. So it's not NPR, right? So the thing is that sign language is the fourth most spoken language in the United States. Fourth is ASL, American Sign Language, is the most common one. And that has created a market for interpreting tools. we've identified more than 60 companies that provide remote interpretation solutions. And this is not counting the solutions that companies have developed themselves. The thing is that, and I apologize, I'm not a technical guy. There is a protocol in the browser in HTML that allows you to do, it's very easy to do Zoom and all these teleconferences. And I forgot what is you probably know. There is an 8, it's 308 or 508 or something like that. But anyway. Standard 508. Okay, that's something. There's a standard there that it's very easy to do. Google Hangouts and all these video conferencing technologies are very easy to implement because it's part of the language, it's part of the code, and any browser can do that. So people come up with their unique solutions. The problem is that we have a solution in search of a problem. You have created more than 60 solutions, but they haven't found a niche. So many of these technologies are going to disappear. They're not sustainable, and they're going to merge, they're going to be integrated, they're going to disappear. Some of them are marketplaces like Oira. It's a marketplace in Japan where they're trying to offer cheap remote interpretation over the phone, where you use your phone for that. You have others that are, another marketplace is Schedule an Interpreter, somewhere here, down here, where it's essentially you book a doctor's appointment, a social service thing, or a social worker engagement, and you just book it there, and the translator will show up, and you pay through them, etc., etc. So there are creative solutions, but we're very, very, very early on in this process. The areas where you have most demand, or should have most demand for video interpretation, is healthcare and law enforcement. The United States has the biggest incarcerated population in the world, so it's a good market for interpreters. Go to jail, and you'll find somebody that speaks your language that was arrested. It was privatized, so that's the cool thing about living in private markets. So we did a study with the British LSPs for the ATC, which is the Association of Translation Companies in the UK. And one of the things that we noticed, and we've been doing this study for 3 years, is that there is a significant increase of clients, of LSPs receiving work through connectors and APIs. What does that mean? It means that instead of receiving like email, which is the most common way of getting jobs still today, a lot of the work, the LSP's system is going to fetch the content in the content management system of the client, bring it back, translate, put it back there. And so what we have identified, and we have a tool in our website that is free, you can go there. It's a comparison tool where we have identified 500 characteristics of 17 translation management systems. So you can tick the things that are important to you and compare which one is the best TMS for your company. But we have identified that in the systems that are available in the market, there are 150 web and content management systems that are connected to translation and TMS APIs or connectors, but there are over 1,500 of the systems in the market. So sometimes you will have a client that is using a publishing tool or a content management tool that has no standardized connector to the commercial technologies. So there's still some opportunity there. I don't like to talk too much about these MT trends because they're changing by the week. Maybe this is something that was true 2 weeks ago. But essentially what we have is that there is a lot more machine translation available in the market. Amazon came into this place. Has anybody tried DeepL? Yes? What was your experience? Pretty good, right? This DeepL impressed Slater enough to say that they believe that this is the end of the translation world because translators now can use DeepL and it's very impressive and they don't need to worry about translation anymore. They showed good. Good joke, right? They showed an email of a translator German into English translator, who said that he was giving a 10% discount to all his clients because he was using DeepL, and that was increasing his productivity significantly. I heard that when I did the same thing when I had a laser printer, and I used to have a dot matrix printer, and I told my clients, I can print so much faster, I can give you a discount. So technology changes, things changes, but the stories are the same. Training is much easier. Now, even publicly available MT like Google, Amazon, and Microsoft can be trainable in a certain scale, and this tends to be more. I think that Google stated that machine translation is one of their future most important areas for growth, and you're probably going to see advertising in Google Translate. That was the interpretation. There are some aggregators that will provide MT solution using different MT engines. Intento is a Russian company, and Translate4You is a German company, and they're essentially doing. Is anybody familiar with the International Patent Office, IPO? WIPO, World International Property. Thank you. WIPO, World International Property Organization. Anybody familiar with their machine translation systems? Pearl? No, they have something that they call a machine translation broker, right? So they have something, they used to have, now maybe more. They used to have something like 25 different engines. And if this was, and the thing about patents that is really good is that patents are numbered and identified by specialty. So if it is a chemical patent, German into Danish, they would find a machine translation tool that was really good for chemistry, German and Danish, but it wasn't good for German and Greek, for example. So by looking at the language pair and the domain, they could find automatically what was the best machine translation to use for research and for discovery purposes, but they never used it for publishing because, and they had a deal with Google Translate also for being the default engine when none of those expert engines were available. And Intento, also another service that started to be available is this evaluation tools, which combine the traditional way of evaluating machine translation is the Blow score, which is very, according to some people, easy to manipulate. But Intento and 1-hour translations have custom developed evaluation tools that they can use a combination of human and automatic evaluations to see the status of your machine translation. Companies are private companies like Cantam and IconLogic that develop custom neural and traditional machine translation solutions. According to the use case, they will recommend either a statistical or a neural or a rules-based machine translation according to your use case. And now some LSPs already include machine translation as part of their offering from the beginning. They're born around neural machine translation. I think that Lilt presented here once. Didn't they recently present here? No? Okay. Maybe they won't be around by the time. I think that Lilt is a great story. But they're going to present at SF Globalization next year. So you should go there before they go away, because I think that lilt is a feature. It's not a technology. They're just something that every machine translation, every translation memory is going to have. Does anybody work at lilt here? Yes. Okay. So somebody disagrees with me, but they have the idea is that they're building an LSP, so that is going to go on anyway. But the feature of the predictive machine translation, I think, is just a feature. Oh, I thought that this was a charger. I do have my charger, but I think that I only have. Okay. No, I have more. So I have my charger here. Thank you. What is this? Oh.
You see that low battery thing at the top, right? That is why we're panicking.
Oh, but then we're going to have a problem. You see, the Macintosh problem is that you only have one outlet. Oh, but I can put this here. Here, okay. I got it. I just need to find an outlet. Here.
Attention. You're having a first world problem.
It's saved.
Okay.
Yes? Good. Okay. Got stuck. Who wanted me to dance? I told you I was going to do it. Anyway, empty use cases. Here are some areas where machine translation is being used today effectively, and many of you don't even know that it's being used and it's happening. One of the areas that is fascinates me is this system, and you were talking that you're looking at media, but automated subtitling. It's something that is going on as we speak. You can go to Russia, watch CNN, and there's going to be a machine translation and subtitling of it. I saw it for the first time maybe 12 years ago when I was in San Diego waiting in immigration to get my green card, and I had to wait there for 4 hours, and CNN was being translated into Spanish there. But anyway, machine translation is a reality. Don't fight it. Don't be afraid of it. Learn how to use it. And the more cases that you can find to implement it, the better service you're going to be providing to your clients. Machine translation is your friend, is my opinion. So why am I not afraid of machine translation? Why is technology something that is constantly evolving? It's because the problems that we are solving for our clients are changing constantly. As technology advances, as the business develops, as new ideas pop up, new needs will appear. So here are some old and new problems on the left side, and some technologies that are being, or services that can be provided by LSPs on the other side. Anyway, so just to pick up the example of the aggregators, in a situation like this, where you have 200 technologies that we have identified, you need to pick one, and sometimes one is not the solution that you need. You might need 3 or 4 to solve that problem. Aggregators, companies that can work with multiple technologies to solve your problem, that is going to be a solution. That companies that I mentioned, Intento and Translate for You, are doing that for machine translation. But any LSP, any major LSP does that. We Localize, Lionbridge, STL, Moravia, all these companies are, in one way or another, aggregators of different technologies to solve the business problem that you have. Long-tail languages, it's one of the opportunities for growth in our industry that has been the reality for many, many years, is that nobody ever abandons a language. You're always increasing languages. You will find here, if we talk to the people who have been around, they will remember a few cases of companies where they worked where Turkish was discontinued or where Latvian was reduced. I even convinced Microsoft to start translating into Inuktitut for the simple reason that I couldn't find Inuktitut translators because they were all oh, this is probably culturally inappropriate, saying that they were hunting seasons in Canada during the translation season. But that's the reality. We couldn't find Inuktitut translators because it was more fun to them to hunt seals than to be translating Microsoft Windows 10 into Inuktitut. So sometimes languages are discontinued, but the reality is that every year there is a new batch of languages that become commercially interesting and commercially available, and there is always demand for that. So machine translation and this concept of the zero-shot MT, who's not familiar with that concept? One person, two people. Okay, zero-shot MT is that you do MT between a language pair without having English or another traditional language in the middle. So you want to do, my favorite example is when there is a demand for Latvian into Swahili, it's going to be very hard to find a translator of this language pair, but machine translation will be able to do it because of the neural learning process. And that's it. I have some homework for you, for those, because I know that we have lots of students here, and if you don't see homework, you think that this wasn't a real class. So, and I'm very impressed that I was able to do it in the time that I wanted to do it, but I'm very happy to answer your questions, if you have any.
We'll need to give you a mic if you have a question. And Ben's got one over there, I've got one over here. Who wants to give Renato a hard time?
Yes, please. Frank, you have a question.
Oh, no, just a simple request. Would you sign the book?
Oh, he's signing books now.
Yes, I will.
Come on, somebody's got to have a question about seals or baby seals. No?
Oh, come on. No, I will give a book to the person who asks the first question. Oh, there. He won.
Hello. All right. Thank you for this presentation. At what point did you realize that this was the industry you wanted to work in?
Like many people, actually, one of the first things that we say in the book that you won, and I'm going to give to you, is that when you ask people and ask the old timers here, how did you end up in this industry? Usually the conversation starts, funny story. I started in the industry because the Italian Portuguese translator that used to translate movies for the Rio de Janeiro Film Festival died 3 weeks before the festival. And then they needed to find somebody, and they asked my brother, and my brother said that he wouldn't do it, and he said, ask Renato, and I started, and this is how I got into the industry. And pretty much, this is an industry that drags you in. In my podcast, I interviewed Adolfo Hernandez from SDL, and I asked him, you've been in multiple industries, you're new to our industry. What do you think is different about this industry? And he said, people don't leave. They come and they stay and they stay and they stay. So welcome to the trap. But it's like the Roach Motel, right? You can't get out of it. But it's a fascinating business. It's an industry that deals with, and by the way, I joke and I tell translation company owners all the time, it's the best industry to recruit salespeople because you tell them the opportunity. Look at how many countries there are in the world, how many languages there are in the world, how many content there is to translate. And they don't know, and they think, oh my God, this is a wonderful business. I'll come in and I will sell to everybody. It's not that easy, but it's easy to convince people to join. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did.
Xavier, Xavier? Xavier, okay. If you were Brazilian, it would be Xavier. We have a question there.
Okay, wait for the mic. This is how I get my
I'll sign.
exercise on Thursdays. Could you pass this down?
Hi, Thank you. I listen to your podcast religiously.
Thank
I
you.
enjoy it. I was just listening today to the part that I know was in May, but I never had time to listen to the one with the translator, with the literary translator.
Oh, that was a great one.
But here's my question. I represent a niche language, and you just said that don't be afraid that someone is going to cut the languages. I live with that fear that now we live in this bubble, and I lived through a bubble in Silicon Valley. Now, there's a lot of money in Silicon Valley, but there might not be. So, what do you think from the in the
What's the niche language first?
Romanian?
Romanian. Okay. It's an official EU language.
It depends what our politicians are going to do. So.
Do you think
It
it's going to
doesn't
be a
look good.
Romexit?
Yeah. So my question is, if this bubble goes and there's going to be so much money, aren't we going to see some languages that are at the bottom of the economic scale being cut down or cut off? And then what's the thing? to do?
You are confirming my statement from the beginning that this is an industry that's driven by fear. I've lived with that fear for 35 years. I mean, with this fear around me, I never feared it. As a whole, this is an industry that is impervious to crisis. It's an industry that grows constantly. I like to illustrate this with a comment from a client of mine who once said, when the economy is good, we translate contracts. When the economy is bad, we translate lawsuits. So you're always working on both sides of the industry. There will be moments where there is going to be pressure, economic pressure, changes, and things like that. But if you look at a trend line, it's an upwards trend in volume. There might be a little bit variation up and down here and there, but the trend is always going to be for growth. So what you need to find is not only the niche language, but the niche within the niche, or a couple of niches, areas where Romania is strong, where the Romanian language is demanded, services that require, usually regulated industries are really, really good. So financial services, life sciences, government services in general, these are areas that tend to be protected because they're regulated and there is a requirement. People cannot sell in Romania unless the manual is available in Romania. So find those and learn marketing skills, sales and marketing. You are an enterprise of one if you're a freelance translator, and you need to think of yourself as a business. So a business needs to have sales, it needs to have financial management, and it needs to have good marketing. So that's where you need to invest. This is how you're going to differentiate. It's not who is the best translator that wins, is the one that shouts louder. Do you know why we eat chicken eggs and not duck eggs? Does anybody know? Yes. Have you ever seen what's the noise that a duck does when she lays an egg? They don't make any noise. They're quiet. How about a chicken? You always know where they laid their eggs, right? That's marketing. That's what you need to do with your business. I have a question back there, Ben.
Hi, I'm a Miss student. Speaking of the industry niche, I was wondering where and how can we find the next niche?
Don't find the next niche. Find the one that is available now. You're live now.
You're
not
saying
the next
the
one.
industry is constantly changing.
Actually, be aware of the environment and the things. Where are you from?
China?
What part? China is a big country.
Hubei province is in the central.
Central Hubei.
Yeah,
Okay. So
that's right.
what is manufactured in Hubei?
We are a agricultural province.
Okay. So you have food.
Yes.
So specialize in Chinese translations of food stuff that is in your area where you have family, where your brother-in-law works or something like that. Understand your environment, right? If you were in Donghua or in the Pearl River Delta, I would specialize in shoes and There's always a niche. When we talk about regulated industries, life sciences, financial services, government services, and so on, they are generic. They're everywhere. But if you want to have a real niche, find something that you're unique in a certain area and understand your local market, understand the demands that they have there, and offer a unique service. I mean, hey, people in Hubei, I'm the one who went to America. I know America. I know how you can sell your services. And by the way, they will sell even with bad translations. Just saying.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Muito obrigado,
De
Renato.
nada. Oops.
I got
That
you.
was-
All right. I'm very happy to hear because I'm a student at Miss. I just got into the industry as well and trying to figure out what's out there.
Yes.
In terms of service, it seems like your company is one that helps other people see the opportunities out there that the industry kind of motivate the people out there. Is that right? So
we try to solve their business problems, whatever they
yeah.
are. Yeah.
All right. Can you elaborate a little bit on the different sides of this business? Because I'm more interested in the business side. Can you elaborate a little bit on the different side of this industry, like when it comes to business?
Well, essentially, you have 3 players in this space. You have a buyer, who's the reason for everything. You have a provider, an LSP, a company or an individual. We use the language service provider acronym because it's generic enough that it can be an individual, it can be a company, it can be Translators Without Borders, it could be an association, it could be anything. It's an organization that provides services. And you have technology players. These are essentially the 3 players in this space that we follow, and each one of them has different issues, and your opportunity in the market is trying to find what are the challenges and the gap that you can close, right? So where are you from?
I'm originally from Haiti.
Haiti. Okay, Haiti. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, it's a great
you know
market.
what?
Yeah.
There is a lot of demand for Haitian Creole in the United States in the services space. I mean, I know that I did a project for Marriott and Disney, and they have a lot of Haitian employees, and they needed Creole translations for their employee manuals, videos, and things like that. There is the multimedia space. I mean, you can translate Netflix videos into Haitian Creole. I don't know if there is a market for that, but maybe you can convince Netflix to do that. But anyway, people watch TV there, you have to find your niche. I'm not an expert in Haiti. I wish I could help. The only interaction that I had with Haiti was through Translators Without Borders after the earthquake, that we were trying to find resources to help in that space. But I don't know. I'll think. Let's talk. Are you going to be at my class next month?
Probably, yes.
Okay. We'll talk then. Yes. We have a question online.
We have a question from Yuka Nakasone, and Janice is going to read it.
Okay, so a bit of a comment and then a question. Thank you for the description. True, the localization industry has always been in the shadow of other huge industries, starting from IT, telecom, healthcare, aerospace, etc. Now the fear is not only from technology, but from international politics. I felt it so much in Russia this time. I think you guys were in Russia.
Yeah, we met in Russia, yeah.
How do you see the industry from this perspective? Actual international politics and economy. As you move throughout the world, I think you have some great insights to share.
Yes, that's a very good question. Thank you so much, Yuka, for the question. Because we tend to have a view of the world that is Northern Pacific centric, right? It's the United States and the rest of the world. The United States is the bully of the world, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if you follow international politics, and when we were in Russia, I don't know if you had the chance to to see. There is a lot of demand for Chinese-Russian translation. There is a lot of trade happening between Japan and Russia, Japan and China. China is a new hub of commerce. What the United States thinks they're doing and punishing China, what they're actually doing is opening China to the rest of the world. And there is a joint space program between Brazil and China. There is South Africa and China and Brazil have joint satellite programs. There is a lot of stuff going on in other axes that don't include the United States. So the turmoil that we live here in the United States and in Europe is mostly caused by this old Cold War of us against them, the capitalists against the communists. China is not communist anymore. Russia is not communist anymore. They're doing business, and if we want to be smart, we shouldn't be doing the things that we're doing. But that's another story. And James and I are going to have a big fight about that.
Thank you for the presentation. So we have a lot of students here.
Yes.
Tell us how you hire. What do you look for?
Right now, I'm not hiring right now, but if I win...
I'm saying as a hiring manager,
as a hiring
what
manager,
attributes do you look for?
Okay. What we look in translation companies is my experience. They look for attitude, for people who want to work, right? That's the number one thing. People who have the right attitude towards work, who are interesting and interested. The number, because why is attitude so important? Because skill is something that you can learn. Whatever skill you learn today is probably going to be obsolete in 4, 5, 6 years. One of the statistics that I read recently is that in a person's career, in a person's professional life, they're going to change careers 6 times, right? I'm not talking about changing jobs, changing careers completely. And this is the reality, the new reality of the world. So what are the things that are going to be important in any job? It's a good attitude, ability to learn. It's more important than knowing things is the ability to learn new things. Empathy, because that's something that machines don't learn, how to be empathetic. What else? And this includes a little bit of everything, but the ability to work with technologies, with new technology, and learning fast to adapt to the reality of the environment that you're in. I assume that when you work with on the buyer side, you would have to ask our friends who are buyers here, but essentially you need the same skills, but also a certain level of business acumen to understand the business of the client. And let me go back and say, I read a book that talked about, it's a great book, by the way, I strongly recommend that you read if you have a chance. It's called Rework. It's a book that was written by the founders of that company, 37 Signals. And one of the chapters in that book was called Focus on What Won't Change. Focus on the things that are permanent in your business. And I understand that Jeff Bezos runs Amazon with the same concept, focus on what is permanent. And I went back and I looked at over 30 years that I've been in the industry to try to figure out what are the things that are permanent in our business. And there are 2 things that haven't changed in my 30 plus years in this business. Number one is that what we do is convert content from one language to another. I'm not talking about translation, I'm talking about the core of what we do. And I like to say content because it can be media, it can be words, it can be video, it can be images, it can be anything. And the other thing that has not changed is good customer service. So learn how to listen and learn how to solve problems, because that's good customer service. It's not the mistake that you make that matters, it's how you correct that mistake. It's not the fact that you're going to miss a deadline, is the fact that you tell your client 2 days before that you're going to miss the deadline so that the client can prepare, right? those are skills that you're going to take with you for the rest of your lives. Good customer service. Think like a client. Put yourself in the position where you're a client that is receiving bad news. How would you like to be treated? And treat the other people the same way. And I see that my time is up because I have to run to the airport. Thank you very much. And network. This is